We must vote now. The general demands support.
He demands too much. The people are tired of this war.
When you picture the Roman Empire, what do you see? Legions, right? Aqueducts? Maybe gladiators in the Colosseum? But what if I told you that its most powerful, most lasting export wasn't a thing at all, but an idea? An idea that invisibly shapes almost everything around us, even today. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible story of Roman law.
So where do our modern laws really come from? I mean, where do they originate? The answer isn't in some modern government building. Nope. It's in a system that was forged 2,000 years ago. A system that was built up, completely shattered, and then, against all odds, pieced back together.
So here's how our story's gonna go. First, we'll look at a legal golden age that was defined by sheer genius. Then, we'll see how emperors made their word absolute law. After that, we'll watch the whole thing collapse into chaos. And finally, we'll get to the incredible project that pulled it all back from the brink to build a foundation for the next millennium.
All right, let's dive in. We're starting with what's called the classical era of Roman law. And here's the fascinating part. Its real strength wasn't about having a strict book of rules. Not at all. It was about the incredible brain power, the sheer intellectual firepower of the people who were interpreting those rules.
Okay, so back in the early Republic, the law basically came from two places. On one hand, you had the lex. Think of this as laws passed directly by the people in their assemblies. But then you had something really interesting, the edictum. This was more of a living, breathing tool that magistrates used to tweak and update the law on the fly, to handle all the new problems the real world threw at them. What this right here is the absolute key. The reason we call this era classical isn't really about the laws themselves. It's all about the unbelievable genius of the legal scholars, the jurists. It wasn't just what they ruled, it was how they thought. I mean, these guys created analytical systems so robust, so powerful, that they're literally still being studied in law schools today. Now, this is where the emperors get really clever. They come up with this special seal of approval called the issues respondendi. You can think of it like a 5-star rating for lawyers, handed out by the emperor himself. And if you had this patent, your legal opinion was suddenly backed by all the might of the emperor. It was pretty much a guaranteed win in court. And what's crazy is that this wasn't about playing favorites. The emperors gave it to the absolute sharpest minds, which actually ended up raising the bar for the entire legal field. But you know, this kind of subtle influence from the emperor, that was just the start. The whole system was on the verge of a massive, dramatic shift. We're about to move from an era of brilliant minds to an age of absolute power, where one person's word was all that mattered. And you can see that power shift happening plain as day. Those old ways of making laws, you know, the people's assemblies, the magistrates' edicts, they just start to fade away. They become almost irrelevant. And in their place rises one single all-powerful source, the Constitutiones. These were direct orders, straight from the emperor. And this quote from the famous jurist Ulpian, wow, it just says it all, doesn't it? What pleases the emperor has the force of law. All the legal power of the entire Roman state, now in the hands of one guy. It was a complete top-to-bottom transformation. So you might be wondering, how does one person actually wield that much legal power? Well, they had two main tools in their toolbox. For the big, sweeping changes, they'd issue a general edict that applied to the whole empire, like that famous Edict of Caracalla that made all free men citizens. But for a more targeted approach, a bit like a laser beam, they'd use something called the rescript. This was a direct answer to a regular person's question, and that answer would instantly become law. So you've got this top-down and bottom-up system of total control. But of course, a system this centralized couldn't hold forever. It was just too brittle. And that brings us to the post-classical era, a time of such deep, widespread crisis that it almost wiped Rome's entire legal legacy off the map, for good. Yeah, this period gets a new name, the Dominate. And that's because the emperor was now seen as the dominus, the private owner, the master of the empire. And if you think that's just a symbolic change, get this. In 395 AD, when Emperor Theodosius I died, he literally divided the entire empire between his two sons, just like you'd split up a family farm. And from there, the decline was just terrifyingly fast. First, that permanent split of the empire into East and West. Then, not even 100 years later, the Western Empire completely falls apart. It's this broken, fractured world that sets the stage for our story's unexpected hero, an emperor over in the east named Justinian. And look, the crisis wasn't just military. It wasn't just about battles and borders. It was an intellectual crisis. It was happening in the libraries. After about 250 AD, those great legal minds, they just vanish. All that brilliant innovation, gone. It gets replaced by just simplification. Being a legal scholar meant you were just summarizing what the old masters wrote. Now, the East managed to keep the lights on in their law schools, but in the West, the whole legal culture just fell apart.
Which brings us, finally, to Justinian. He's the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, and he has this impossibly huge, almost crazy idea. He's going to restore the glory of Rome by first restoring its laws.
So Justinian basically had two massive projects going on. The first was to try and reconquer all those lost lands in the West with his army. That one, well, it didn't really work out. But his second project, this grand plan to restore the law and culture of Rome, that was a success on a scale that is just mind-boggling, even today. Now, to pull this off, the team he put together faced a task that sounds completely impossible. They had to read, analyze, and boil down 1,000 years of legal thinking, scattered across more than 2,000 books. So how do you even begin to tackle a mountain of information like that? Well, he had a two-part plan. First up was the Codex. The goal here was to take all those imperial laws scattered everywhere and put them into one single, organized, authoritative book. But then came the big one, the Digest. This was a massive collection meant to rescue the brilliant ideas of all those classical jurists we were talking about earlier. And the Digest, that was the real masterpiece. Honestly, think of it like the ultimate legal encyclopedia. It was searchable, it was perfectly organized, it was basically a greatest hits album of Roman legal genius. And it was designed to be the last word on the law. Forever. So, what's the big deal? What was the lasting impact of this incredible project? I mean, how did this one set of books end up shaping the next 1,000 years of law?
Well, it all came down to a single guiding idea. At the very heart of the whole project was this principle, reverentia antiquitatis. It means a deep, profound reverence for antiquity. See, Justinian wasn't just trying to make a rule book for his own empire. He was trying to build a monument to the genius that came before him. And this reverence had a hugely important result. Because they respected the past so much, every single piece of writing that went into the Digest was carefully credited to the original author. It sounds like a tiny detail, right? But that one decision to include the author's name single-handedly saved the legacy of jurists like Ulpian, Gaius, and Paulus from just vanishing from history. Their ideas survived because their names survived. And this, right here, is the big takeaway, the why this all matters part. Justinian's work didn't just rescue Roman law from being forgotten. It became the actual foundation, the source code, if you will, for almost every legal system in medieval and modern Europe. Those civil law codes that so many countries use today, they are the direct descendants of this one incredible project. Think about it. In the 6th century, with scribes and scrolls, Justinian managed to save 1,000 years of human thought from completely disappearing. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our digital world where we have more information than ever, but it's also so fragile, how are we going to make sure our own knowledge, our own ideas survive for the next 1,000 years?
Knowledge transcends time. Truth endures.